about our topic, our paper, as you have mentioned, which is entitled Literary Translation as Rewriting. So, as for the outline, we are going to introduce the topic, defining it, talking about its importance, why we have decided to talk on this topic and not on something else. And we are also going to talk about the methodology that we adopted in our study, the data analysis, the discussion, and the conclusion. So let's start with the introduction. Our article eliminates the need for making linguistic and structural modifications to produce a new version of the original based on its cultural and linguistic basis to ensure that in translation nothing is out of the purpose. So our article sheds light on the idea that linguistic and structural modifications should be part and parcel of any sort of translation process, especially when it comes to translating from particular language into another, and the two languages belong to different sign systems, just like Arabic and French or English and so on. So these modifications, in fact, are highly needed to convey intended messages and cultural nuances accurately in another language in a way that is understandable and acceptable in target setting. Which means that I can say in another way that this adjustment, in fact, address mainly differences in terms of idioms, sayings, grammar, tone between two languages, to ensure that the target text is not only correct grammatically, but also it fits to the cultural expectations of the target setting, or the cultural expectations of the target audience. I want to just emphasize on one idea. That is, what is needed in literary translation as a rewriting is not adhering to the source text 100%. What is needed, in fact, is preserving its essence while adapting it into the target setting, ultimately optimizing the clarity, readability, and the effective communication. So let's move to defining the topic. I find it very important, before talking about literary translation as rewriting, I need to talk about literary translation and I mean separately, and rewriting. After that, I will come up with like a conclusion based on the ideas that I made about literary translation. What does it mean? And rewriting, what does it mean? So let's start with literary translation. It's normally seen as a genre of literary creativity in which a work written in one language is recreated in another. In fact, anyone who belongs to literary studies or a field of translation knows very well that literary translation is a category of translation that goes beyond the mere linguistic transfer of meaning from one language into another. It really requires to deeply understand the cultural, the context. Cultural, political, and historical context of the original text, and also to be able to convey the author's voice and intention in another language. Ultimately, in fact, creating a particular text in which we use sophisticated and figurative language. And I can say, in fact, that literary translation is an activity that requires creative decision-making. So, having talked about literary translation, I want to talk about rewriting. But before talking about rewriting as something that belongs to translation, I want to say that rewriting, we use it also in any sort of other literary work. So, in the relative translation, rewriting is the reconstruction, the modification, the rephrasing the original text in another language. It requires reimagining that experience of the original author modifying it to fit certain purposes, certain goals, than recreating it in another language. The most important thing is that rewriting requires modification. There is always an ideology behind the rewriting. Translators are supposed to make certain free decisions regarding not just terminology, but also regarding the theories, regarding the strategies of translation that they use. After that, I need to talk also, because I mentioned it at the beginning, that rewriting shouldn't be restricted just to translation. We can use it in any literary work, including original compositions. In fact, we can see some authors, when they can refine or revise their work to fit certain purposes, like to achieve some impact on the readers. Having talked about the writing in both literature and original production of a particular literature, I want to say always, as I previously mentioned, that writing is always driven by certain ideology. As Lefebvre and Basnet mentioned in their book, Translation, Culture and History, all writings, whatever their intention, reflect a certain ideology and a poetics, and as such manipulate literature to function in a given society in a given way. So I have talked about literary translation and writing separately. Now I can make a sort of conclusion about what does it mean, literary translation as a writing. I can say that literary translation as a writing, it's combining the aesthetic and figurative features of literary translation and need to make certain free decisions that are based, which the concept of writing is based on. So I can say again that literary translation, in other words, as a writing, in fact, it's a creative and transformative process, wherein the translators create and make some free decisions to translate particular text from one language into another, turning translation into an instrument of creativity and manipulation, and even both of them, depending on translators' decisions and choices that are mainly driven from their cultural backgrounds and orientations. I want to talk now about the significance of the topic, why we have chosen to work on this topic and not on something else. In fact, there is a huge number, I can say, or a number of reasons why we have chosen to work on this topic, but I wanted just to talk about the main elements. The first one is related to our thesis, because both of us, me and Abdelmajid, we are working on thesis that fall under the umbrella of translation studies. And investigating this topic, in fact, has enhanced our research and has broadened our knowledge in this context. Secondly, its emphasis on the creative nature of translation. Having explored this topic has helped us to make a conclusion that translation is an art, it's an artistic activity which requires creativity to convey the essence and the nuances of that text in another language, to make it somehow an artistic piece of art in itself. The third element is it raises the issue of ethics in translation. We all know that everything we do, we need to do it according to certain rules, and it is just the case in translation. Normally, when we translate, we do not deal with translation as a linguistic issue. We need to look at it as a cultural issue, because many extra linguistic problems came into the surface, and we need to be aware of that and to deal with the text with great respect and justice. What I mean here, that translators are supposed to master the two languages, the two cultures, and to be aware of the cultural norms, taboos, and the customs, to avoid, I say, misrepresenting people's experiences, people history, people's culture, which can be embedded in the original text, but also to avoid offending the target readers. And this can be achieved only when we are aware of the importance of selectivity regarding the translations strategies. And in fact, I will just give you a simple example. Though I believe that the translation strategies are a double-edged sword. Omission, when we use omission and we omit something from the original text, many people, and I do agree with them somehow, when we omit something from the original text, they start talking about falsifying the meaning, distorting the original text. But there exist some cases in which omission is highly required, especially, or at least this is what I do. When we translate a particular text that is full of offensive expressions and swear words, we need to omit things to avoid offending target audience. So I want just to talk about the methodology that we adopted. In fact, we agreed to use a quantitative research method for the fact that we wanted to collect numerical data that we later on converted it into graphs to facilitate the analysis. And for that reason, we focused on questionnaires and we targeted 63 participants from diverse universities over Morocco, because we created that questionnaire, we posted it on Google Form, and we shared it in some groups of PhD and MA students. The fact that we focused on the questionnaire because it can be available all the time, and it doesn't require our presence to be carried out. And so many things. I just want to go very brief on that thing because of the problem of time, and to talk about the method that we did, we used to make our analysis, that we focused on descriptive analysis, because I do believe, at least all both of us, we believe that it is a critical tool to present and organize our findings in a very clear and comprehensible manner. Now I want to give the floor to Mr. Abdul to finish the